Anyway, this is Ian from the Famous Auto Hub Show. This is our recorded one-on-one show. It's a series that I do. I usually do recordings every single week, and I have the pleasure of having Thomas. I don't want to butcher your last name, so maybe you can pronounce it. But Thomas is on the show today. We're talking about automotive, but first of all, we're talking about how did you get here? Like, how did you choose automotive as a career path, and why?
Wow. So it's Irisitano.
Okay,
And
I knew
uh,
I'd screw it up.
yeah, the eye, everybody looks at the front and they go sideways on it.
Yeah,
Actually, next week, I'll be celebrating 37 years of marriage to my wife.
congrats. 25 years for me this year, later this year.
And I was selling cars and she was our receptionist.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So
And
one of the many men who was sitting on the receptionist, but this time you actually made it happen.
right.
That never
Yeah.
happens in a car deal. The receptionist never gets hit on by the salespeople. That never happens.
And consequently, I started selling cars like 3 years earlier. So that last year was 40 years in the car business.
Wow. Well done.
Yeah.
So
I've
why the car business? I'm just curious. Like I always want to hit some people say accidental. I needed something to do. Like, why did you choose the car business?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in an Italian family, and typically, you're in some type of construction or something.
Yeah.
So one of my uncles owned a construction company, and my father passed away when I was young,
Sorry to hear.
and you know, mid through high school, my brother and I were kind of going a little sideways, and we took this little ride. I don't know if you're familiar with Florida and
Oh yeah.
Alligator Alley.
Oh yeah. I went
So
to Florida as a kid. My grandmother had a place there. My uncle had a place there. My cousin still has a place there, in
yeah,
St. Pete's actually, where all the
yeah.
Canadians like to hang out. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so Alligator Alley connects the two ends of Florida
Yeah.
and west. So, there's nothing out there at all. Literally nothing.
Yeah.
So we're driving for about 45 minutes, two of my uncles, my brother and I, and um, total quiet. Finally, we stop and we get out, and you know, my uncle says, "Listen, you got to straighten up and fly right. You're going to work for me. You're going to work for me." So I got elected to do construction, and you know, I did that up until I was like 20, probably 22, 23,
Okay.
you know, early 80s. And, you know, um, we got into a disagreement about a commission about a house I sold. And, I'd done this presentation with this woman happened to walk up to the house. Now, this is early 80s and it's about a 5,000 square foot home.
Okay.
Back then it was like 2 or 300 grand. Now it's probably 2 or 3 million.
Yeah.
So, uh, and it was a sizable commission, especially back in that day. And I said, "Well, you don't deserve it." And he couldn't justify it, so I said, "Okay, hey, sayonara." So I'm driving home. I see a Toyota dealership. I pull in. Next thing I know, I've got a job with a demo, a shirt and tie, and a check for my truck.
Wow. So they hired
Yeah,
you on the spot, no resume, no interview. You're like, yeah, you want to sell cars? Okay. When can you start today? All right, rock and roll. Here's the
yeah,
keys. Go sell cars.
yeah, and that pretty much it. I mean, I
No
went through.
traditional interview, no background check. Yeah, you want to sell cars? Okay, rock and roll. Let's start.
Yeah, sales managers doing cocaine at the desk.
Yeah. Typical
Yeah,
stuff. Throwing the keys up on the roof and all that shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's up on the roof. Um, you know, PO
So,
or
what?
go on the glass next to the doors. You
So,
know,
40 years. I think the long. I actually worked with a sales manager. I remember doing some training with Travers. I think it was years ago. And the trainer's like, "How many years experience? How many years experience? How many years experience?" And then he went around the room. And then my manager was like, "Yeah, 45 years." And the guy starts going like this in
uh,
the training, right?
you're either really smart or a glutton for punishment.
Yeah. So he said to me, I said, "Hey, 45 years ago, like what was going on?" He said, "Well, I started selling motorcycles uh, out of a gas station And then I got into cars, and at that point there was no finance. So what you'd do is you'd sell a car, and then you'd drive around to different banks, and they'd buy part of the risk, and then you'd like deliver the car. And he said I was complaining to my manager one day, and he said, "Well, I don't like selling a car and then having to drive all over town and get the funding, and then come back and deliver." He goes, "Well, you're doing it wrong." He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Sell 3 cars, do that once."
Combined rides and yeah.
Yeah, and he actually had the opportunity. There was a guy at the time. There's a movie about this guy. It's a pretty interesting guy. So this was back before there were computers, and he worked at a bank, and he had a gambling issue. So what he did is he created this fictitious company, and then he loaned himself money so he could go to Vegas to gamble. And it was the bank's money, but nobody was to the wiser because they figured it was bank loans, and he did all the paperwork, and it was all on paper. And then eventually it came out that this guy was like gambling millions of dollars a year or something like that. I think the guy's name was Mahoney or something anyway. But what was interesting is after it all went down and he got arrested, they sued the bank sued the casino. They were like, listen, like this guy stole money from us and he gambled it with you, but you can't keep it. Like we want that money back. Like I don't know the care. And it was interesting because the casino was trying to figure out how to get the guy to gamble more. They just thought he was a wealthy guy. They'd like fly him back and forth and whatever. But the thing that was funny was the only thing that interested him was gambling. Like he drove this piece of shit car. He had a girlfriend, but he wasn't interested in that on the side. He wasn't interested in drugs. And they were trying, and the casinos go, like, if we could just get him hooked in, we could get more money. But the only thing he was interested in is gambling money, and he wasn't very good at it. He just blew a lot of money that he didn't have. So it was kind of interesting. It actually reminds me of a guy I sold used cars with way back. So he had 4 different children with 4 different women that were all the result of a one night stand. So he was like the best used car guy I ever worked with because he was
Wow.
constantly, these women would constantly show up looking for money. So he sold all kinds of used cars. But I remember the receptionist saying to him one day, "Yeah, you should probably figure out how to use contraceptives. Like you should probably figure that out or stop drinking because like you can't afford more of these women. Like just stop. Like stop now. Like you got a problem, dude. Like you make a lot of bad decisions, but eventually you won't be able to make any." That was hilarious. So in 40 years, um, what's changed in the car business?
Well, not a whole lot. I mean, you know as well as I do. I mean, shoot, at first, I can remember my first computer didn't even have a hard drive in it. Floppy disk,
Yeah,
the computer, floppy disk external drive, and then they had dial up. You
yep,
had AOL,
yeah,
you got mail, and then she probably wasn't until what mid '90s we started to getting emails,
yeah.
and then oh my gosh, the world was coming to an end. We had, I can remember F-150s never had an MSRP on them, and then that changed. Then Y2K came along, and oh my God, the world was coming to an end. You know, the clock ticked over, and guess what? Nothing happened. So I went 1988. I went to F&I.
No, okay.
Uh, then was promoted to a sales manager. I've opened up 2 brand new Ford stores. One was Sawgrass Ford
Yeah,
in the early '90s, and then I did a stint with Ford Motor Credit for about 8 years.
okay.
Left there, went to work at Ford at Greenway Ford, and opened that store up brand new. My God, that was a rush. I mean, we came at both of those brand new Ford stores, 400 cars a month right out of the gate. July of 2000 at Greenway Ford, we did 750 units.
Wow. Well done.
Yeah, we had 3 new car managers and 3 used car managers. And I forget how many F&I people we had. We must have had about 6 of those,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and then I went to a smaller Ford store in Kissimmee. And then my wife said to me one day, she says, "Hey, I want off this treadmill. My mother's getting older.
Yeah.
I want to move home to Valdosta." So I literally packed a suitcase, I tried calling and emailing every franchise store, got no response. So I packed a suitcase, headed up here, and the second store I walked into was Valdosta Toyota.
Yeah.
And, the GM back then was Ashley Carter, who's still a good friend of
Yeah.
mine. He looked at my one-page resume and he goes, "Damn, son, you like a pedigree. You got papers."
Get you a piece of paper with some experience on the McDonald's. Great.
Yeah, he's like, "You work for this guy?" Yeah, I work for some great organizations.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, I'd like to make you my GSM, but I can't give you the title because I promised that to my used car manager."
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't care what you call me, just pay me." And in the
Yeah.
same breath, he says, "Well, you need to sell cars first." And I was like, dude, I haven't been on the floor in 20 years. His immediate response, "Hey, it hasn't changed." So I was like, okay. Uh, he says, "But the good news is I have 5 appointments for you tomorrow."
Wow, that's good.
How do you get 5 appointments? He said, "Well, we have our softwares with eLead, and they have a call center, and they data mine for me."
Oh,
So that was my introduction to eLead. Lo and behold, a couple of years fast forward, I go to a Ford store, I go to get signed up on eLead, and a good friend of mine who was working at eLead said, "Hey, why aren't you working for us?" So I jumped on that train. I worked at eLead for like 10 years and left them about 4 years ago and went out on my own.
fucking
And
hell. It's
been
kind
doing that
of,
ever since.
kind of, kind of interesting because I've done a lot of stuff in the car business, including retail, but I have a family history in the business. But what was interesting is I was recruited out of retail to train call center agents back in, God, when was that? 2009, 2010. And they wanted me to train social media to car dealers at the time because I got myself in a little bit of trouble doing some social media back in the early days of the internet. And
Oops.
and it was funny. So I was doing some posting on YouTube and other places with the current incentives so I could drive traffic. And then I was going driving from Vancouver, where I used to live, across the border. I had a day off. I was driving across the border to pick something up on the U.S. side, and I get this hot call from the dealer that I worked for at the time, and he's like, "You will come in today." And I was like, just ready to go through the border drive through. And he's like, "You will come today and talk to me." I'm like, "No, I'm on my day off. I'll see you tomorrow, man. I'm not." It sounds like you're pretty upset, so I'm gonna do it tomorrow. So I come,
Whatever it is tomorrow.
yeah, yeah. So I come in the next day. I walk into the store, and the general manager has me come into his office before I see the dealer, who's upstairs. So I go in, and the general manager's got a grin from ear to ear. He goes, "Yeah, the dealer got a call from Honda. You will do this, or we're going to take your franchise." And he
Oh
said,
my
he said, "I love your initiative, but you gotta dial it back a little bit." He's a little upset. So
oops.
I was laughing a little bit at the time, but it was funny because at the time, and this was a long time ago, Honda would release these incentives every month, and they release them to the dealer, and then I'd promote them so I get people to come in and buy cars. I managed the internet department at the time. I took it over from someone else who didn't want to do it, and I would just put these incentives out in the video, like, "Oh yeah, we got this special going on. You weren't legally allowed to do that," and Honda had people scouring the internet to watch out for this stuff because they didn't want people doing that. But then I worked for a company out of Charlotte that did BDCs. I trained social media. I've worked in lots of different areas, including for the manufacturer Nissan for a short time, which was funny because this Nissan Honda merger, I was laughing about. I'm like, talk about two cultures that'll never get along. Nissan blows people out every week at the corporate level, and you're gonna add them to Honda, who's probably the most conservative company outside of Toyota I've ever worked for. Like, come on, man, that's never gonna work. Like, that deal is not going through. And then let's throw MITS into the mix because MITS is just a company everybody wants to partner with. Let's throw them in so we can have some subprime skin in the game there. So what's funny though, when you look at the history, in 2000, believe it or not, I was working at a small Honda store, and we didn't have computers on our desk. Believe it or not, all the numbers were done by the manager of the finance office. So I was working with the lease manager because I was working internet leads, and I'm like, "Hey, I need a payment," or I was working with a customer, I need a payment. So I went to the lease manager's office, and he had a computer because he was the lease manager. And then I went and I talked to the customer about a payment. And then the manager came in, he took the computer off the desk, the lease manager, and threw it against the wall and said, "If you ever do that again," I was like, "Wow, where have I walked into?" It was like the Twilight Zone or something. But move forward today, which is kind of interesting. When I look at the tools, and I actually interviewed a gentleman earlier today, the video will be up hopefully next week. But he was talking about a piece of software that he developed for the auto industry. He was initially in the boat industry, and then he went to that. Yeah. So
Yep.
let's. That was really interesting. So let's get into. You're out on your own now. So
Yeah.
I'm alone now. I'm getting out on my own. So what was the reason? But more importantly, what are you doing these days?
Well, I mean, I'm not a spring chicken. I'm 66 years old, and you
Just
know,
getting started.
yeah, I've seen just about every way you can do something, and in the car business, and between eLead and Ford Credit and my travels, I've probably been in 1,000 stores.
Wow.
And yeah, my first four and a half years with eLead, I was on a plane on Monday, home on Friday, doing installs.
Yeah.
And then I transitioned into the in the office and where the call center was. So because I had retail experience there, everybody wants to pull you. Hey, help us with the BDC agents. Help us with this. We're doing an internet process. We're doing this. We're doing that. Everyone wants to pick your brain, and that's still the case even now. You know, uh, well, I host a clubhouse room
Yep.
6 days a week. There's about 100 people go through that a day, and there's always something that pops up. And then I'll get people I've had interactions with over the years, and I get projects that from time to time, hey, I need to fix this. I need this person trained. I need a workflow for this. I need a process and writing for that. Uh, those types of things. And I've got a couple of stores that I have on retainer. Like Mr. Granger, I've known him for about 12 years from my e-lead days.
Right.
And he actually became my first customer, only because he said, you can't go anywhere. We're joined at the hip.
You're part of the
Uh,
furniture. What are you doing?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Matter of fact, when I was there last year for a visit, he tells me, he says, "Hey, we're going to go see my attorney." Go see your
Okay.
attorney? Okay, for what? So, well, you're going to sign a non-compete.
What?
You know, those, you can't work with any stores within a 50-mile radius. I looked at him and I said, just make it 100. Make it 100 miles. What the heck? You know. But he was joshing me. He wasn't serious at all. He's a card. He always tries to pull stuff like that, pull my leg, and we got a great relationship over the years, and uh, he's always poking and prodding. Uh, Another one calls me anytime, any day, any time of the week, usually. But as our relationship has evolved, you know, uh, I get fully immersed in both of his dealerships. Salespeople have my cell phone numbers, service writers. When if they run into something, or uh, you know, sometimes the GM will pull them aside. Hey, I'm having a hard time with X. They'll get me on the phone, or I'll schedule a visit to. Like here recently, I went to the store in Savannah, spent a couple of days there, and worked with the salespeople, the managers mostly, because when you leave the store, they're the ones that are holding the bag and have to keep things in,
Right.
moving along. Uh, and then I'm always looking at new products that are out there in the market. So when something pops up and I need to fill a void, or make a recommendation, I've got something I've either used or have demoed and vetted pretty fiercely. I don't know if do you know Russell Hill?
Yep. I know Russell very well. Yep. I've had him on the show.
Yeah,
Like not hundreds of times, but at least 20 times, I would guess. Yeah.
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 What a great guy, and we same thing. We've got a great relationship, and he was walking me through. He says, "Hey, I got some new stuff I want to show you," and you know, it's usually pretty cool stuff, and things that help the dealer be better, and maybe overcome some of those things that they're faced with on a day-to-day basis. And that's
So
really
like,
how you make your
oh, go ahead.
worth.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's how you build value in what you do. You
So
know,
so you're looking for clients, you're looking for dealers. I mean, what are you looking for? Like obviously you have the experience, you put in the time, you're a well-seasoned guy. You're younger than the average dealer. I was actually on the show last week and they were saying the average US dealer principal is 72 these days.
really.
Yeah, based on ChatGPT anyway. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they were saying. So I thought that was funny because I was sitting there and going, and I actually trained a guy who was 84 selling cars 3 days a week, and I said, "Why?" He said, "Yeah, I don't want to
You
be at
know
home
what
all
to
the
do.
time." And he was pretty sharp for 84 selling cars 3 days a week. But when you're looking for a client, and I know this never happens in the car business, what do you do from a vetting point of view to say, okay, this is a person I want to work with, I can add value, or this is a person I don't want to work with because either they think they know everything or I can't add value. Like, how do you do that?
It's funny you say that because I just took on a client about 6 months ago, and I was introduced from someone else.
Yeah,
Usually, how they find me, and we started chit chatting back and forth. Just you know, what pain points do you have?
yeah,
And of course, first thing they asked me is, well, how do you work? I said, well, I have no agreements. I'm a handshake kind of guy,
yeah,
so that if if you need to fire me or I need to fire you, no harm, no foul.
yeah. Fair enough.
I like keeping things simple. Uh, you know, those relationships are more deep rooted. Because initially I started talking to a couple of guys that are already out there that are consultants.
Yeah,
What do you do? How do you do it? Oh, I got this 20-page document, and this I got a 5-page. And all you're gonna do is get attorneys involved.
yeah,
If you don't like me, okay, fire
yeah,
me. If what I'm doing for you and I don't see we're making progress, I'm gonna fire you because guess what? You're gonna go out there and say, "Oh, I worked with Thomas and it didn't work." Bullshit. I'm telling you the hard and fast truth,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you don't want to do it. I had one dealership. I said, and I even told Mr. Granger the other day. I said, "What time are we open? 9 o'clock. What time's the meeting start? 9 o'clock, because it's too late. You're already a half hour behind.
yeah.
You need to be here at 8:30, so when 9 o'clock happens, you're ready to do business."
Yep, yep.
You know,
I mean,
well,
I worked with
uh,
what was it, 68 Nissan stores when I worked for Nissan, and there was one store, and I remember the store completely because I'd show up at the store. I was there every month, and I'd have a meeting with the sales team and the finance team and the used car team and managers. It was a OEM meeting like all the time, every month. I'd show up, and this one store, their sales meeting started at 8:30. Everyone else like maybe 9 o'clock if they showed up, if they had a coffee, whatever it was, right? And I
stumble
said,
in.
and I said to the dealer, and it was funny because the dealer would always be in the meeting, and he had a pulse on every deal they were working. Like every deal, he knew that deal front to back. Like he knew what was going on. He was trying to push the cars down the road. Small dealer on Vancouver Island, if you're familiar with Vancouver Island, small place. And I said to him, I said, "What's going on here?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well," he says, "if they don't show up at 8:30, they don't work for me." And I'm like, "Well, okay, well, it's fine. It's your bat and ball, dude. Do whatever." But what was interesting was when he first bought that store, or he first got into the store, he started off as a partner, and he got, I don't know, 20% of the store. And the owner said, "Well, if you hit these numbers, we'll let you buy more." So then the next year he owned 40% of the store. And he said, "Well, if you hit these numbers, we'll let you buy the rest." And he's like, "Okay." And then like a year later, he owned the whole thing. And then he was buying other stores. But again, I saw a post today on LinkedIn. They were talking about if you're on time, you're late. And it reminded me of something my dad told me many years ago, which was if you show up early, you're ahead of 95% of the people. If you show up early and you know what you're doing, you're ahead of about 98%. If you show up early, you know what you're doing, and you can deliver, you're ahead of 99% of the people. And that's exactly what I agree with you there 100%. When I was training finance managers, I trained one at an Infinity store, and he'd always roll in late. I was there every month. He'd roll in late every time I was there, and he'd roll in with like two big Red Bulls. And I said to him, I said, dude, you knew I was coming. I'm here every year. I mean, I'm here every month. After I talk to you, I'm going to talk to the dealer. What the hell are you doing? And then he would fight me on any training I did. So eventually I talked to the dealer. I said, what? This guy works for you. Why does he work for you? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but you should be getting rid of this guy. So I come back the next month. He was demoted and moved to a different role. I was like, what? Why am I doing a pitch battle with you every day? Like every time I'm here, I do have a battle. Like, why am I doing that? I'm here to help you. Like, you're not paying me.
Yeah,
But
same
yeah,
thing.
it was funny.
I said to a GSM, I said, "What time's your meeting?" "Well, 9 o'clock." "So what time do you open?" 9 o'clock. I said, "Well," and then I went through the same conversation.
Yeah.
"Hey, should be here at 8:30." "Oh, I'm not going to come any earlier and work more." Wow.
Well,
I fired that dealership
well,
after.
I have another story that you'll enjoy. So I was a sales manager after I worked for Nissan. One of my Nissan dealers, he wanted me to be a hired gun sales manager for a few months because he needed me to fill in for him. Okay, I'll run the store for a couple months. Fine, I know the deal. And I had this salesman who every day showed up late. Like every day he was late by 5 minutes. So I said, okay, tomorrow, when you come late, because you will, I want you to go to McDonald's, take everyone's breakfast order, go get them food, and then bring it back for him. He said, oh, okay, no problem. Next day he's doing this. And then the next day he's doing this. And the dealer's like freaking laughing his ass off about it. He's like, what's the deal with the salesman who's now an Uber driver? I said, well, I'm trying to teach him that he should show up early, and then he doesn't have to do that. But he isn't learning it. So he's now become the breakfast delivery boy. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I used to tell salespeople, "Hey, if you come late, you're either going to bring breakfast for everyone or you're going to sing."
But I'll tell you another one that was really interesting. There's a billionaire in Canada. His name is Jim Pattison. His combined companies 2 years ago made $14 billion in revenue. Huge. He employs about 60,000 people. But he started selling cars in high school part time to his classmates. So the guy who runs his automotive division, and he owns a bunch of other companies now, like food companies and all kinds of other things, he had a sales meeting that started at 8 o'clock. And if you didn't get there at 8 o'clock, he'd lock the door and you couldn't come in. This guy who now runs his automotive division rolled in at 8:05 and got one of those radial saws, the radial saws, and he cut the door down so he could get into the meeting.
That's one way to do it.
So he ended up, fast forward 20 years, he now runs his 20 dealerships or whatever it is. But it was funny because I met him a couple of years ago. I'm actually trying to get an interview, but it's a little bit of a hard chase because he's 94 and he works 7 days a week. But it's interesting because they asked him when they were doing the interview, they said, okay, when you were selling cars in high school, like when you sold the car, did you walk home? He goes, oh no, they gave me a ride. And I was like, wow. He said, I remember the first guy I sold a car to, and that was like 60 years ago or something, 70 years ago. So, what would you say to someone who says, hey, I've been in the business 10 years. Like, what's it like at 40 that was different than being there in 10 years? Like, what would you say?
Well, you'll probably um, agree with me. A lot of times in this business, you'll meet someone that's been in the business 10 years, except it's really 2 years times five.
Yeah.
They've never gotten past that second year and grown. And like me, I've always been a student of the business. Like you, I'm always trying to learn things and, what's the newest, latest, and greatest, what's the shiny object, and you're always looking for um, that piece of knowledge, reading books.
Yeah.
Uh, I write my own material, and 9 times out of 10, it's on the fly
Yeah. Yeah.
because every dealership is different, every situation's different. You've got templates, but you've also got to be able to tweak them, to that specific dealership or what they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Like my my recent visit here in the middle of the week, uh, I came up with two things. And it was because, hey, I got a unique situation. I got to keep it simple because if you make it complicated, congratulations, you've uh, you've accomplished your goal. You made it complicated. And most people in retail, they shaking your head. They're not complicated. There's a reason they're in the car business. It's fast, it's furious. You make great money, and it's just like I've got a 23-year-old son, and I think he's in his third month at a Toyota store. A good friend of mine's working there as a GSM, and I know he's not gonna coddle him, but he's gonna be a good coach and a good mentor.
Yeah.
And we were even on was it today or no, it was yesterday. I said, so Roger, how's JT doing? He said, well, be honest with you, like we've talked before. He said, I'm being patient with him. His first couple of months, he's written some bad checks. He's stumbled and bumbled,
Yeah.
but I can tell you this month, so far, he's responsible for 11 car deals.
No, that's good.
So he's not selling cars. He's like a BDC manager. He's on the phone all
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So
Learning the real skills.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
So I
You know,
actually asked a
both.
question earlier today in the same way to a gentleman because I get approached just like you with these tech guys and in auto, and they all want to show me a 45-minute demo on something I really don't care about. Not to beat them up, but yeah, I
They
don't want to
pull up
see
a deck
45
and
minutes on anything.
yeah, they pull up a deck and it's slide one of 70.
Yeah, and I go, listen, I got 15 minutes. Stop. So give me the high level. I see this stuff all the time. I know a lot about it. I know how to sell it. Fine. Tell me what it is in 15 minutes or less. If you can't do that, just pass. So when I
Yeah,
look at car dealers today, and I look at dealer principals, and I look at the kids or the general manager of GSM, where do you see that millennial, Gen Z, Generation Beta or Alpha or whatever it is they're calling it now? Where do you see those people fitting into that car dealership process or experience or business in 5 years? Like, where do you see that going? What do you think?
just like you and I, the the generation before us, we picked them apart.
Yeah,
Like we're talking about now, and
yeah,
I'm a boomer,
yep,
like you. So, but the generation before us are like, well, why the hell are they doing it that way? You know,
yep,
and so you got to be open to suggestion. You got to be open to new ideas. I don't think they're very much different
yeah,
than we were. You know, two arms, two legs, got a head. I think we just have to be open to suggestion, and culture is so key. Like my buddy here at the Toyota store, he's being patient with them. If they need time off for their family, go do what you got to do. Take
yeah,
care of your family. Like for my son, he's not working them 7 days a week, bell to bell.
yeah,
He's there from 8:30 to 7 every day, Monday through Friday.
yeah. That's fair.
He doesn't need to be making calls on Saturdays and Sundays. It's too late, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I worked at a dealer, did 6 days, and then I eventually did 7 days. When I worked at a dealer 6 days, I wanted to learn the business, so I worked all the time because I had training every day, 2 sessions. But also, if I did the training, I could talk to people, so I wanted to learn. But when I look back at it now, 15 years later, I go like, I was working crazy hours. But at the end of the day, I'm passionate about learning stuff and getting better. So to me, I think that's really what is the key to success, whether it's AI or the robots are coming or software or whatever. I think at the end of the day, it's always about customer experience. That's what my show's been around
Yes.
since day one. But more importantly, it's about how can I customize that experience to that consumer. And I'll use the example of some service I'm doing on my vehicle. Unfortunately, the garage door took out one of the beams on the roof rack of my vehicle. So I went over to the dealer and I'm like, "Can you order these parts?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll order them and then I'll book you the appointment and then we'll see you then." But even in that service department, they're not communicating because then I got a text today. "Oh, we got the parts in. Yeah, I already booked the appointment. I'm not like moving it. Like, why would I do that? That's just going to cause chaos. And it was funny because I think the difference between the generations today isn't communication, it's the details of what communication should you use for what person. Like, take a look at that generation, take a look at the preferred thing, and then communicate that way. I mean, their Jeep got in a little trouble today because I guess they're trying to sell extended warranties on the screens in vehicles now. And then there are people are all upset about it. I'm like, well, Tesla's been doing that for 10 years. Like, buy now, but Jeep can't do that. What do you mean? So it's kind of interesting. But at the end of the day, I think dealers will have less staff, but they'll be better trained staff. Like the staff will have to be jack of all trades. There's going to be less headcount, I think. That's my projection for the next
Yeah, you know
5 years.
what? No, I agree with you. I mean, why not ask what's your preferred method of communication? Is it text, email, phone,
Yeah,
video?
yeah,
You know, ask, and people will tell you. It's amazing. You know, if you
shocking.
ask them, I always call it the five W's and an H: who, what, where, when, why, and how.
Yeah, simple.
And all those answers should be me
Yeah.
if you've done the right thing and create that, like you said, that excellent customer experience.
Yeah, like I look at all these silos that were car dealers and probably still are in a lot of cases. And I look at what's going on with the price of cars and tariffs and all this stuff that's going on, which is basically just accelerating change, in my opinion. You're going to see these things have to integrate and become working together as a team. Because if I have a business with five silos, F&I, sales, parts, body shop, service, whatever that is, maybe detail or something, whatever. If I can get those teams running in the same direction, I can not only create a better customer experience, I can have five streams of income that make sense. Versus, well, let's sell the car and hope, or let's service the car and hope, or let's hopefully sell some parts when people come back and want them. So the way that I think it's funny today is I saw an ad the other day, tire storage for free for life, and I'm like, that's kind of like the oil change for life program, but dumber. Like what else can you store? Will you store my boat? Like what are you doing? It's just insanity.
Higher storage.
It's like, how do you even qualify for that? Do you have to buy tires, or you just store them for free, or like, what's going on? I worked for this Nissan store years ago when I was with Nissan, and I was talking to a service manager because I had this oil change for life program, and I said, "Well, how's that going?" He goes, well, "We have people that bought the car from the guy who originally bought the car who's still coming here for the free oil changes. Second generation owner. It wasn't even the original person who bought it." And I'm like,
Did he get away with it? Is the question?
hmm?
Did they
What's that?
change the oil for free?
Yeah, forever. Like he's just, whenever that car comes in, they just rock him an oil change. And I'm just like, what are you doing, guys? Like what? And then what? And then years later, I think he changed it from a Nissan store to a Jeep store. So I'm like, so does that mean you're still honoring the oil changes from when it was a Nissan store? He goes, what do you mean? I go, well, you still got those customers, right? You can still service it. You were a Nissan
Pull up
store.
to a Jeep store and a Nissan. Hey, my oil changes for life. Oh, that's insane, isn't it?
Well, I was working at a dealer when I worked for Dealer Effects in Los Angeles. This was hilarious. So that the dealer was complaining that the service writers don't sell tires. So, they have one of those metal racks with the tires bolted to it, right? Like screwed on, right? So I said to the service writer, I said, well, do you have tires in stock? He goes, I don't know. I said, well, if you wanted a set, like, how long does that take? He goes, oh, 45 minutes. I said, in Los Angeles? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. So out of curiosity, you got four tires here screwed. Do you have the other three of that set or just the one that you can't sell? And he goes, I don't know. So I said, okay. So I walked in the parts. I said, okay, so
No.
do you have tires? He goes, no, we don't have any. I said, well, what about the ones in the drive? Do you have the other three of that set or do you just buy one? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, well,
What do
like,
you mean?
when you look it up, like you got a computer, look it up. And he goes, no, we just have the one tire. So I said, okay, so what you're telling me is you have no tire inventory. He says, no. I said, okay, fine. So then I'm training the store and whatever. And at the end of the week, the director for service for the group, which is a multi-rooftop group in Los Angeles, sits down with me and he goes, "Well, I heard you were talking to our parts guy about tires." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, what tires should we order?" I said, "What do you mean, what tires should you order? The ones that come with the cars you sell, dude." And he goes, "Well, how do I do that?" I said, "Well, you call the tire distributor and they land a couple $1 million in tires at a location and you have tires now." And he goes, "Well, why would I do that?" I said, "Well, you were complaining they don't sell tires. And I bet you if I threw a rock, I'd hit a tire store like a couple feet away from your store in Los Angeles. Like, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to find." And it was like, holy crap, like, what are you doing running the operations for this group? It was like,
Oh my
wow.
God.
But I appreciate the time. How does someone reach out to you? There will be details below in the description. How would someone find you?
Hey, all you have to do is Google digital car guy.
Rock and roll.
I'm
And
sure you
then
can't.
what? And
Most
then
people
what do
can't
you
spell.
do? Like,
Yeah.
is it like a monthly visit? Is it like a weekly visit? Is it like custom? I mean, there's nothing but a handshake. But what's the typical
Well,
client?
it's something like I said earlier. Sometimes it's a project.
Yeah,
Let's, hey, you think I should do an offsite BDC or a combination of both? I'm not getting all my internet leads
yeah.
handled. I'm not getting all my phone calls answered in service. Uh, I can't seem to connect this widget to that widget. Uh, can you take a look at the why? Um, a lot of times I do mystery shopping.
Yeah.
I'll tech stack audits. You know, what do nine times out of 10, you're paying one or two companies to basically do the same thing.
No. Really?
Surprise. Yeah.
You mean you have 10 bongles when you need one?
Or, hey, it's like I'll find, hey, what does this thing do? Well, I'm not sure. I call the company. Oh, we've been doing business with them for 9 years. Okay. That wasn't the question. What is it you do? Oh, we put backlinks on your website. Really? Didn't that go out of style like in the 2000s?
I remember Cardio years ago. He took Grant Cardone's training from the 80s and had it remastered from VHS to DVD. And I'm talking to him. I'm like, "How old is this training, dude?" He goes, "Oh, it's like from 1983." I'm like, "Okay, so you still think that that's pertinent today?" It's
Yeah,
like,
I saw Jackie Cooper live twice in the late 80s. Is that still relevant?
like when he had jet black hair and the pinstripe suit back in the day, double breasted. I was
Yeah.
like, he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Don't you think you should get something a little more up to date?" I don't know, maybe about the internet. No idea. Well, I appreciate the time today, and
No, thanks.
if I can help you, let me know. And of course, the details will be below. Have yourself a great Valentine's Day.